engineered originals, continuations and, yes, restomods, it's getting harder and harder to stand out. So what do you do if you want to try to prove that yours is a cut above the rest? Well, if you're HWA,
you turn 3 of them into race cars, bring them to the Nurburgring and see if they'll last for 24 hours. This is the HWA EVO.
It's a modern, freshly homologated €800,000 interpretation of the legendary Mercedes 190e 2.516 Evolution II, and it has all of that car's presence and aerodynamic swagger.
It's got more arch than a raised Roger Moore eyebrow.
So on some amazing roads, we're going to see if the driving experience lives up to the looks.
And we'll also show you the factory back in Affalterbach and the full scale of just what is behind this extraordinary car. It's enormous.
This episode is driven by Hagerty, who, in case you don't know, provide car insurance that's designed by drivers for drivers. So, if you have a special car that you don't drive every day, like one of these perhaps, then take a trip to hagerty.com/Henry. Or pick up the phone, give them a call, and speak to a like-minded enthusiast about a quote.
Now, you might not have heard of HWA, but I'm willing to bet that you've definitely heard of AMG. And the A is the same in both. Aufrecht.
The H and the W? They are Hans Werner Aufrecht's first initials. It was he and Erhard Melker that founded AMG in 1967. When the company was sold to Daimler Chrysler 3 decades later, Aufrecht set up again on his own. Not that the apple fell very far from the Affalterbach tree.
Because today, like a single blue M&M in a bowl of green ones, HWA is literally surrounded by AMG.
HWA's first task was to build the CLK GTR road car. But after that, Mercedes set the company to work with racing.
For the first 20 years, they were really, most closely associated with DTM. Apparently, Bernd Schneider was always in Bay 1. And seeing these cars today, I just absolutely love them. They're so cool. They really are Formula One in a saloon car body.
And you don't have to look very far in the factory to see just how successful HWA was.
The sheer number of iconic cars, liveries, drivers that they've worked with over the years is really summed up in these cabinets here. These small models are just amazing. They were used to entice sponsors for the following year, and some of the road car projects in there as well.
HWA might have spent those years living largely in the shadows while the three-pointed star took the glory, but now, the contract with Mercedes having come to an end, it's time for HWA to step into the light. And over the years, it has become very well equipped to do so. As you might imagine, there is not only an entire engineering and design department to do the theoretical stuff, but they also have capabilities in pretty much every area you need to actually build a car.
I think one of the departments that shows the sheer scale of HWA is the paint shop. That's a Evo R rear bodywork there, which is why it's a little bit rougher. It's just enormous with the sheer number of projects in here, some of which we can talk about, some of which we're not allowed to. This fade here was something that they actually pioneered and which we saw on the Project 1.
And then there's the parts department.
One of the areas that I think shows the sheer scale of the operation at HWA is the parts department. 30,000 boxes on all these shelves and rows housing millions of parts. And sometimes I think it's difficult when you see a new restomod to know whether it's the product of a couple of people in a shed somewhere or something rather larger. In this case, the car really is just the very tip of an enormous great iceberg.
But HWA didn't just want to look after their past projects, they wanted to draw inspiration from them.
This is, of course, the original, the 190 Evo II from 1990, one of the 502 produced, 500 of them in this colour and 2 in silver. The only options you could have were all leather or leather with the fabric inserts on the seats. And it's kind of integral to HWA. The reason they chose to, well, replicate this car for their first new car is because Hans Werner was the person that went to Mercedes and said, if you want to be competitive in DTM, you need to homologate this new aero kit. They went, whoa, this huge wing, it's grotesque. But the rest is history.
And that history has now been brought bang up to date.
Think of it as a DTM car for the road. It looks just incredible. I'm not sure I've driven any car, saloon or supercar, that's had more thumbs up and stares and people walking over to ask about it. It just looks sensational. So what would you feel when you first got into this? Well, I think you might be initially a little bit underwhelmed, certainly sort of perplexed by some of the weightings. You have to remember this is a prototype because the steering's actually pretty light. Initially I thought this car was staying super flat in the corners, but actually there is some roll there, but it's because you've got such a low center of gravity. That's what's playing with your mind. I think you can really feel that this is from a race team. That sort of light steering is something I've experienced in competition cars before, and you get your feel through the chassis in this.
You might think the 4-point harnesses are overkill in a saloon, but I actually think they give a good indication of just the sort of car this is. And HWA has gone to great lengths to homologate the car with them.
These seats were actually designed originally for a military application because they're the only ones available. Thankfully they are going to change for the production car because, well, to be honest, they're very flat and they don't have anything like enough support, and that support I think is going to be crucial to this car. Maybe it's just because I now know that they produced it, but this really does put me in mind of the CLK DTM because that was a car that really surprised me. I looked at it and I thought, wow, it's just going to be a sort of soft thing, but you drive it and instantly the stiffness in the whole chassis. Now this hasn't got a carbon fibre tub like that, but it's the same kind of sensation of this incredibly stiff car with the suspension hung off it.
It really seems hard to believe that this is derived from an old Mercedes 190, but just how much of one of those 1.8 million original cars is really left underneath?
This is the department where all the donor cars come to be stripped of their various parts, which are then cleaned up and reused or sold on or kept for future use, so they all get a second life. And once you've stripped the car of everything, well, it ends up like this one up here, which, as you can see, there's not a lot left of. Down here we've got some of the cars that have just come in, and there's one really nice little detail that I like on the originals that kind of, I don't know, it's just cool, you don't get to see it very often. Right at the front of the car here is like a sort of a very old school QR code, I suppose. This thing, which when you scanned it, would tell you the exact spec of your original 190.
After it's been stripped back, the remains of the 190 are married to the roll cage. And then, to talk us through the next stages of the process, we have Gordian von Schoening, Chief Technical Officer of HWA.
So this is the production line, and these are all GT2s waiting to go out to customers.
Correct.
Now, but chasing them down the production line is the very first.
The very first HWA EVO road-going car, and yeah, we are very proud of these projects. There is multiple cars we have created and built here together with AMG in the last 15 years. And even before that, the SL65 Black Series was built in this section. Yeah, but now our own creation is on the hoist here. You can see the chassis 001 actually in the color blue-black. We're very proud to build this car first for one of our clients. He actually also owns the 001 out of 500 original
Really?
190 Evo IIs.
Oh wow.
And now
So
they're
it's kind of a
coming
matching
together.
pair of kind of...
Yeah, exactly. That's why he picked the color of the original car that was only made in blue-black, and now it's the same. Yeah, but I think this is a good place here also to show that it's not a 190 that we have changed, right? So it's going to be specifically built car looking like an old Mercedes, but yeah, this one is totally new.
So what remains really of a donor car then?
Yeah, you can see these sections here, so these sheet metal around, this is out of a donor car, so the whole door section, ABC pillar, a little bit of this section here around, but that's it. And you can already see these aluminium casted parts, which are totally new, to have a completely different kinematic and steering. And just behind this one, we have one important thing, the ABS system that we have developed together with Bosch specifically for that car. And yeah, what is still remaining is hinges for the bonnet, hinges for the boot, and some parts of the door handles, but yeah, that's pretty much it. So everything else is bespoke and made for that car.
And am I right thinking, so the overall length remains the same, but the wheelbase has increased?
So the wheelbase has been changed. So we actually moved the rear axle 30 mil backward because of this act here. And since we're having 20 inch in the back and 19 in the front, 19 in the front, we also moved 50 mil forward. And for sure the track width was changed significantly. So almost 300 in the back and a little bit less in the front.
And I can also see inside we've got the full integrated roll cage in here.
Yeah,
as
exactly.
well.
So you can see that the whole floor is completely new component and not rebuilt as the original, but totally new, strengthened up with a lot of piping. That's all steel actually. So we have kind of a steel monocoque, you can almost say. And then we have bolt-on aluminium, and all the bodywork is then carbon.
And there are some fun retro options for what shade you can have that carbon bodywork painted.
Clearly you can have whatever colour you like for this car, but some of the historic ones are particularly good. There's obviously this mocha brown here. The smoke silver I rather like, which is a bit taxi. And then this one, silver thistle, which is one of those things you recognise it from the past, but clearly it's been just updated to be a little bit more metallic. Talking of original, look at that. That's the original type of tartan fabric on there, which is rather fabulous, blue as well. And then something else, which I'm not sure I've sort of seen offered very often, is the different tints to the glass that you can have in the car. So this little box here, we've got examples. You've also got totally clear there. Then you've got your grey, or my personal favourite is this one, the sort of heavy green tint on it. Love that.
As I've mentioned, the car I'm driving isn't quite what customers will receive in terms of trim, but it has its own charm.
It always feels like a real privilege to drive a prototype, and I love the fact that they so clearly have a story to tell, with the juxtaposition of beautifully finished production parts with very much prototype parts, like the spars on the steering wheel here, which are very obviously 3D printed. You've got stickers like this just for radio. Also up here, roll cage beautifully hidden away, but down here we've just got exposed bits of it, which I really like that stuff. Screens, beautiful one up here from Bosch, and it mimics the original sort of dials, but then changes when you change modes, and then another little screen down here for sort of connecting to your phone, that sort of thing. But again, against that, you've got these big chunky buttons here, which will be in the production car, and they wanted to put in here, well, just because when you've got gloves on, they're much easier to operate things like this for windows like that. These 4-point harnesses, which might look a little odd, they will be in the production car, but for them, they will have sort of inertia reels tucked away in the back of these seats, so it'll be much easier to get on and off and sort of adjust and make it life as sort of easy as possible whilst having 4-point harnesses. One other little thing as well, almost like a good key. This is rather fun, quite chunky but fun.
And what that key controls is interesting.
The engine is a 3-litre twin turbocharged V6 from Mercedes originally. HWA thought they might offer 2 different states of tune, but in the end, sort of because of homologation reasons, they've decided to stick with 1 state of tune, so everybody is going to get more power. The final figures, around 520 horsepower and 440 pounds-feet of torque.
Specifically, the engine is based on Mercedes M276, but with larger turbos and new internals.
It's a really interesting engine. It's not obviously got the character of a naturally aspirated V8 or even sort of a high revving, naturally aspirated 4-cylinder like the original. I think some people definitely would have preferred to see that in this. Me too. However, it is an exciting engine. It sounds kind of really dirty in a way.
There is a bit of old school turbo character to its delivery, and its voice really changes at 4,000 RPM.
The engine only revs to sort of 6,500 RPM, so not particularly high. And you don't really feel like you need to rev it all the way out there either. So you've got quite a short sort of torque power band to dip into, which is a shame in some ways, but also means that on a give and take bit of road, you are changing gear a lot, which is really fun. We've got double wishbones all round, ball joint suspension, and then KW dampers, which you can alter by this button on the steering wheel. So we've got comfort, sport, and then track. And sport and track also loosen the stability control, apparently well outside of the ranges that Bosch would normally allow. And certainly there's plenty of slip if you want it. Not only do you feel the just superb damping, we've got some really bumpy roads around here, but even in track mode, it just soaks them up so you can absolutely rail through the corners.
HWA has paid real attention to the camber compensation in the corners, and thanks to the transaxle layout, the Evo's 1480 kilos are distributed pretty evenly, 48-52 front to rear. The end result is a car that just feels so well balanced and confidence-inspiring to drive hard.
Under the bonnet, carbon, obviously, you can see that it is very much a prototype, not least because on this carbon strut brace, complete with cable ties, it's got PT6, prototype 6, and in fact this was the one that was due to be crash tested, but that ended up being PT7, so it's had a stay of execution. Other interesting things, we've got the oil tank here for the dry sump, and actually this little plaque down here is rather special because this is the first one with its own HWA VIN number.
And while that might sound like a little thing, it is actually a really quite crucial part of this whole project.
The European Union gave us the trust to actually generate VIN numbers for up to 1,500 cars actually per year. Wow. For sure we are not doing this, you can see this is not possible, but it will be about 50 cars that we are producing in that line per year.
Just to understand, what does that mean for you in terms of having to homologate this car for that sort of run? What are the hoops you have to jump through basically to get that?
So I have to say that if we would have known that up front, we would have possibly questioned if we should do it. We're ending up doing it, and all the team, even partners outside, they really supported us, and in a very short time we managed to actually achieve 90 tests of what you have to approve. And including crash testing and evaporation tests and emissions testings, and only to name the bigger ones, but you can imagine a lot of things has been done. On one day we actually had 6 tests at the same time. It was crazy. Yeah.
Wow. Which explains why you've had to build so many prototypes of this to get to
exactly. You had to have more cars in a short time. But it is worth it because this actually separates us having done a proper engineering job and creating a proper car that is totally new to modern day standards.
But worthy though they are, pieces of paper from the European Union aren't really very eye-catching when you're trying to show the world that you've built a kick-ass car that is far more than the average resto mod. Which is why HWA decided to take it racing. Here, the Nurburgring 24 Hours. Half measures apparently translates as halbe Sachen in German, but I'm pretty sure it's missing from HWA's dictionary, because despite only deciding on the project in November, they went to the Nurburgring this year with not one, not two, but a trio of EVO.Rs for the SPX class. And just days before the flag dropped, they were still building the third car.
So this is the race prep shop, so prototype area, is this sort of
this is the place where we are actually building up prototypes of any project, and that's where everything starts in a compact whole, you could say. But yeah, now we have 3 cars here in the build, 3 race cars based on the HWA EVO, actually.
That's amazing. And just talk me through some of the differences, I suppose, between this and the road car.
So, I mean, the idea actually started to bring the road car to the track, but soon we figured out, okay, we can't do that. Starting with the shifting, you can't do H-pattern 24 hours, then safety should be a different seat. All the roll cage was actually changed then quite significantly. And as we are engineers and a lot of, let's say, racers here.
It snowballs. We could make that better. Oh, we could make that faster.
Exactly. It was like, can we change that? Can we change that? And we were like struggling around, okay, these are costs. But at the end, the question is where you want to end up with the performance. And our clear goal was to be exactly in between GT4s and GT3s. And we are now really where we wanted it, but as you know, like everybody was pushing. Can we reduce weight on that part? Can we change that? Can we get more downforce, more power? These kind of questions came up like every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And then over here, obviously, we can see a few more of the I suppose changes on the chassis, and the suspension is fairly similar.
Actually, the chassis itself also quite similar. I mean, you see these brackets here for air jacks and stuff. This is something you don't have on road cars, although we kind of thought in the beginning as an option. But it's 40 bars, it's quite powerful, and it's not really something you can handle. And the chassis, beside the roll cage for sure, this is totally different to attached seat and the fuel cell. Suspension is quite similar. I mean, we changed a couple of things to get more air on the brakes. The brakes are different. They are
AP Racing.
AP Racing, and here we have these aluminium 3D printed parts that actually guide the air to the bespoke uprights. Yeah, you need some air to get the brakes cooling down. I mean, the car is not as light as a GT3, but also in between, and therefore you have a lot of energy in the car when you're braking.
It won't surprise you to know that there will be customer versions of the Evo R, but they won't just be track day toys.
I mean, what we're doing now is we're doing these 3 cars, but we have so many people now asking to actually get these cars that we have thought about actually building 15 of those race-only cars. And we are talking to categories beside NLS and 24-hour, Creventic and other series to run that car also on other specific cool endurance racing and other racing.
And if you're thinking that third car is missing an engine, well, it was in a dyno room. Of course, there isn't just one state-of-the-art dyno, but a whole corridor of them. Although the solution for increasing the noise through to the control desks is surprisingly rudimentary.
At the moment, they're doing virtual laps of the Nurburgring, so we're on the Dottinger straight at the moment. You can hear it's absolutely wide open, flat out, all the way down there. That's the limiter.
All that so that just a week or so later, the 3 cars could be here.
I don't think I've ever been on a grid quite like this. It's sort of clearing out now, but as you can see, the chaos on here, just the number of people, it's just incredible. And all 3 Evo Rs up there together looks so cool.
And thanks to a certain Dutch quadruple F1 world champion, it wasn't just the grid that was busy this year, as none other than triple Le Mans and N24 winner Klaus Ludwig can confirm.
In the last 20 years, we had 200,000 spectators all the time. It was always packed. But now, due to Verstappen, we have maybe 100,000 more coming from Netherlands, and fantastic.
Now, just in case you feel I've got ahead of myself, here are a few facts that hopefully demonstrate just why the N24 makes a case for being the toughest circuit race in the world.
The circuit is made up of the Nordschleife, which was built 100 years ago, and then parts of the modern GP circuit. In total, it's nearly 16 miles or over 25 kilometres in length.
There are over 150 corners each lap, and many have names that sound like the evil nemesis in the Bond movie, except that Schwedenkreuz, Galgenkopf and the Fuchsrohre can be far more terrifying. The weather in the Eifel Mountains can be capricious, and it can be beautiful and fine in Adenau, yet tipping it down by Tiergarten.
About 160 cars take the start in 3 waves, and the extraordinary thing is there's just such a disparate range, everything from Lamborghini Hurricanes to a Dacia Sandero.
As you can imagine, the delta between fastest and slowest is pretty big, making life tense for both. And it's not just the track that's crowded, because there are so many cars that they have to share, 5 to a garage.
One of the tricky things is that the circuit is so sprawling that actually staying in touch with the cars is really quite difficult. And sort of, until quite recently, it was like sort of, going around the dark side of the moon. They'd disappear off down Hatzenbach, and then you just wouldn't hear from them until they came back down the Dottingerhöhe straight. It's better now, but there are still black spots on the sort of far side of the circuit, which just seems extraordinary.
Of course, it's when actual darkness descends that things get really crazy, because the spectators take the N24 every bit as seriously as the teams.
It's part festival, but it's also a little bit more lawless than that. The deeper you go into the woods, the more it feels like, I don't know, a sort of post-apocalyptic encampment in a way. It's madness out there. Absolutely brilliant. The other thing is that you go to somewhere like the Mall and it's quite an international feel to it. This is very definitely a German event, and all the better for it, I think.
Max Verstappen. Hi, hello.
And at the end of it all, well, those that survive definitely feel like they've earned a drink.
Wow, I'm full of emotions. I'm so proud to be part of that team. I mean, look at the emotions of everybody. Every single team member is in fights against tears or is in tears. I mean, they pushed until the very end. It's massive. That's all I can say.
Oh, that was unbelievable. And everybody worked so hard to make this happen. These race cars didn't exist 5 months ago. And to cross the finish line in front of all these people, all the passion, not just from in the organization, but from all of the drivers that they selected who were lucky enough to be part of this program, and all of the fans out here. And it's not just anybody making a race car that looks like an old one. It's the people who originally built the old one, right? So how much more fitting can it be? It was amazing.
Well, I started to cry in the carousel when I saw the people. They're leaning into you, giving you the heart. You could see when I looked at them, they were, he's looking at me, and then they said, yeah, we love you. It was amazing.
So that's it, 3 cars across the line, which is a phenomenal achievement, especially considering this whole project only started in November. And a little thing that you probably won't see reported elsewhere is the car that won the race overall. HWA built that as well. Is this a road car or a track car? I really think it treads the line exceptionally well. You can absolutely feel the connection to those cars that were racing around the Nurburgring for 24 hours. It has that race car feel to it. It's a car that wants to be driven hard, and I think HWA, they almost can't help themselves. You can tell that they're a race team at heart, and there are certain things that they just want to do. Even though this is a road car, they want to make it like a race car. But it is civilized enough, definitely, to use on an everyday basis.
It's not exactly the roomiest saloon car in the back, but despite the enormous fuel tank, there is still a decent boot. There's also Apple CarPlay, and at over 150 miles an hour on the Autobahn, it was serene. But you never forget the race car heart.
I'd love to race one of these around the ring. And that's not something I say lightly. You've got to have confidence in a car to think that it will be fun to race or even just drive around Nurburgring.
Maybe next time. And this is clearly just the start of the journey. The start of a new journey that means a lot to HWA the company and HWA the man.
It is sure very important that we have these 3 cars in the race now. But the problem behind, yeah, in the last 5 years, we was really thinking what we can do in future. You know, we lost the deal with Mercedes-Benz to maybe in motorsport, yeah. So what we can do, and then you decide maybe it's a way to go with the 2.516, yeah. And it was for the board a very tough decision to say yes, we go. But now in the end, you see the results. We are really happy. Now our company has again the future. Yeah? And in the moment, the automobile industry really in a deep shit. Yeah? Many of them have no future. And we are now in the position, and we show it here at the Nurburgring, we have a future, and that's important for our guys. They have to believe it. And that's why I'm happy that we could show this to our guys.